Just buenos dias, good morning to all of my sisters and our champions, our advocates, and to, of course, our legislators. We just welcome you. To my sister Rochelle, you are truly living a legacy. So often we think of what can we do to pass on that baton. And we sometimes think about in terms of later, when we have what sometimes we think all the money, all the time, and all the power. But truly, your words are about if not now, then when. And so I just my heart was full when I heard all of the wonderful steps and love. Just to me, your whole message was about love. To Professor Pugh, my sister, when she calls, I just salute and say, yes, ma'am, and move on. Because a visionary leader as herself, and you just want to be on that bus. You want to be on that path when we are here to serve. To the team and everyone that is logged in, to my fellow sisters who have served it throughout the years and may perhaps have someone who is serving at this moment, our prayers are with you. When I think about making a difference, I think about, first, all of us will have a why. And sometimes we need to revisit that why to get back connected to matters of the heart. And when it comes to our sisters and in looking out at the future, you have to have a lot of heart, and you have to be, my why were my own parents. I'm the daughter of immigrants, and they didn't speak English. And what they did was raise 10 of us on about $200 each combined. And yet they instilled something that no amount of money will ever buy. I learned about it in another way from a manual later, a field manual. It's duty, honor, and country. I didn't learn it then. I learned it growing up. Growing up in a barrio, a community that almost a lot of immigrants will come to, and there's always that community. Somewhere in America, there's that place that you go to build your dream and to start that journey. For my parents, it was Laredo. But I think Rochelle will be touched that journey took them all the way to Sterling, Illinois. And there, in that 1948, they discovered that families that looked like them, there was no home. There was no place for them to live within the city. Yet they believed, because they were people of faith, that maybe this country wasn't ready for them, but they were definitely going to create a path for their children to fulfill what my father would always say, el sueño americano, the American dream. So there they lived in a boxcar for 5 years. No furnace, no anything, just steel walls. And yet they put into us the value system that this was not their country, but it was ours. We were not to ever take from it, for we were to give to it. And my dad, who never could get that little American flag for being a citizen, said that the only flag that his hands would ever touch were because one or all of us gave our life to our country, then he would then, only then, accept an American flag in his hands. So of my 10 brothers and sisters, 8 of us are veterans. Including in those 8 is another sister, a veteran from Desert Storm. So I think about my why and why now still have this dialogue around our women, sisters in uniform, and their journey. And I'm excited that the legislators, our advocates, our champions are listening, because we have some very important topics to still discuss, particularly the one that my sister Mary talked about is mental health. That is affecting not just our sisters in uniform who retired and laid their uniform down or are still wearing it, but I call it intergenerational trauma, which I hope that will become one of the main topics as we go forward in this think tank to provide the services, but more holistically and more comprehensively. As I walk the streets and with the pandemic, I've had to transition to a virtual platform. Listening to families and listening to the children share that it's a safe place to speak of them thinking, why are they still living? Why should they keep living when the world that they thought was a safe and kind world has been turned upside down? It hurts to hear a 7-year-old say that. It hurts to hear an 11-year-old say that. And it hurts for any parent and ask the question, I'm also not in a good place. What can I do? And for our sisters, veterans who come back from those unspoken moments far away, it only gets compounded because where do you go? And so the question then for us to ask in our why is why then our sisters, when they know that they have children, immediately then under the auspices of intervention, lose their children, whereas we could provide a more holistic support in the intergenerational trauma theme. I believe that's just one of those topics that I think we should look at. The other is, as a woman of Hispanic descent, stepping into the ranks in the 70s, yes, I'm a little old crusty still, but as soldiers, we don't die. We just kind of fade away, as they say. That in those moments, I thought about honoring my father and holding that space among the ranks, that as a first generation Hispanic woman, that our contributions, our valor, and our commitment was no greater, no less than anybody else who wore that uniform. And that we could bring honor and dignity to many of the communities like mine, the immigrant communities that stayed in the shadows. But I want us to think today about our dreamers, our DACA, our fellow brothers and sisters who bravely served and gave their life, and that the question of citizenship and status and the benefits that should have been afforded to their families do not get cast aside. To serve is to be noble. To serve one's country is to act upon a democratic value of citizenship. And so we say, let us not leave anyone behind, then let us not leave all those families, regardless of their status. Let's not leave them behind, and let us talk about what could be done in terms of honoring and being noble to those descendants of those brave men and women who have served. The next thing that I hope that we will always remember is that there will be someone else coming after you. And I hope, as my sister Rochelle said, that it will still inspire many a young girl like me from the Devil's Den to think that she too could wear that uniform and that she too could become a scientist and earn a master's in cybernetics like I did. That she too can work on a classified assignment around the world. But also in my time to see that I was always reminded, oh, you're the only one. Only what? Only woman of color. That became such a common remark throughout my 20 years. It was, oh, you're the first woman to be pregnant. You're the first woman. We don't have a uniform for you. You're the first woman that attends a staff meeting, and yet there was a topless dancer about 10 feet away. You're the first woman that we didn't have the quarters out
Is
woman to be the highest ranking Hispanic, and the list always became the first. Well, no, I can embrace that that's my role, but I will not be the last or the only one. Prosperity is for us to then, as we have heard our sisters say, is to create a wider road than the one that we had perhaps break into. Uh, that we, no longer have to have discussions like I did around the idea of a sanitary napkin being a part of the supply system, a uniform for a woman that chose to carry a child and still serve her country, that she would be not looked upon as a problem, but rather an asset. All these years later, I know that we have a long way to go. And as my sister Mary said, 2016 is when all women were now eligible to fulfill all of those professions, combat or not. I know that for my sisters of Vietnam, that the idea that whether they were combat or non-combat, I know from listening to many of their stories that during the Nam days, they never asked themselves where that line was. That whatever their fellow brothers and sisters came as nurses in the roles that they played, that was never the question of where the boundary was. It was simply to do what they came in to do, and that's to serve, to heal the wounded, and send someone home, because we never leave anyone behind.